On the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, I'm Moon Gan-young. In a few moments from now, we'll be bringing you a live coverage of President Moon and President Trump's 9th summit in New York, and we'll be bringing you live footages of that from New York, from Intercontinental Barclay in New York. Now, this is their 9th summit of the kind since the two leaders took office, and we will be discussing this further with an expert who's in the studio with me, Dr. Junseong, professor at Yonsei University Graduate School of International Studies. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So in a few minutes from now at 6:15 local time, so at 6:15 Korea time, so that would be in the afternoon, 5:15 in New York.
Yeah.
We are going to be seeing a 45-minute long, what's anticipated to be a 45-minute long bilateral summit between President Trump and President Moon. There are a couple of agendas that we expect to be highly on the agenda. And of course, going into this summit, there are very key aspects that the two leaders will discuss in terms of rekindling the North Korea-U.S. denuclearization talks. What are your key observation points in heading into these talks?
Yeah, actually, I mean, it's after the failure of a Hanoi talk, and both parties, including maybe three parties, including North Korean, and they have to come up with some alternative solution to solve the problem. And from the Hanoi, we learned that there is a big gap between the North Korean government and U.S. government, and when it comes in relation to how to denuclearize North Korea, right? So I guess this time they have to try to narrow the gap between two parties.
Right, so there are a couple of agenda items that the two leaders need to discuss. One would be, of course, the key issue of how to resume the North Korea-U.S. denuclearization negotiations so that the peace process that President Moon Jae-in has in mind could move forward, I believe. Now, President Trump also mentioned of a new method that needs to be taken in order to rekindle this North Korea-U.S. talks. Of course, we saw that with the ousting of John Bolton as the National Security Advisor. Are we expecting some kind of a shift in terms of U.S.'s North Korea policy? And what do we expect from the North Korean side in terms of, of a new method, of a new way to basically kick this stalled process forward?
Yeah, I think I agree that the departure of John Bolton as the National Security Advisor, I think is a good sign, positive sign to North Korea, because he is well known to be hawk and willing to take aggressive action, like a military action, even including the preemptive strike against North Korea. So I guess it's a good sign to North Korea, and that's why I think they have reacted quite promptly after hearing the news about the departure of John Bolton. So they identified their the head of negotiation, right? And so I guess that's a good sign for the beginning. And also the departure of John Bolton implying some more. Actually, there's more implication because that he is his idea was that using the Libyan model, which denuclearization first and then get any compensation for in return. But now when Donald Trump mentioned the new method means that something other than Libyan model. That means that something compromise should be happens in the between. So in Hanoi, there was the issue was that the North Korean government want just only Yeonbyeon only, right? However, the U.S. government want Yeonbyeon plus Alpha, and the issue was that there was a big gap about how to get the scope of the ARPA. And now I think the U.S. government have to come up with some kind of compromise how to narrow the gap between two parties.
Right. Another interesting observation point that we need to be on the lookout for is, of course, as the presidential Blue House has said on the onset of this presidential tour, is that they would like to, solidify the already strong ROK-US alliance. And there will be many talking points on that. There were even talks of a possibility of the two leaders discussing the defense cost sharing. President Trump, but according to the U.S. State Department this morning, President Trump has, on numerous occasions, has discussed about the U.S. allies having to pay more to foot the bill for U.S. troops or U.S. protection of its U.S. allies. Of course, that goes without saying, that includes South Korea. Do you expect this topic to come up in this summit?
Yeah, I guess, well, my answer is maybe yes and no. I think that the actual negotiation for the military cost sharing issue, a defense cost sharing issue will be held in Seoul, right, on today, later today. So that means that, well, it was originally, the plan was that the negotiations happen in Seoul, and I'm sure the negotiator already here, watching, waking up early and watching the TV news right now. And the question is that the top priority for this summit meeting? I don't think that's a top priority because it's more important to get, as the Minister Kang Kyung-hwa mentioned several times, is the restart the bilateral talk. I think that's the key issue for this summit.
I think it's very interesting to note what the two leaders, President Moon Jae-in and U.S. President Donald Trump, had to say just hours before their sit down. So they haven't yet sat down yet for the spotlight yet, but just prior to heading to the venue for the talks today, which is going to be where South Korean President Moon Jae-in is staying in New York, which is another very unique thing I believe about this summit, is that President Trump will be visiting President Moon's accommodation place rather than the other way around. So, but that President Moon, when meeting with the Antonio Guterres, so the UN Secretary General, he discussed about the possibility of a third North Korea-U.S. summit coming up very soon. President Trump, when asked about the possibility of his meeting with Kim Jong-un, by reporters in New York just hours earlier, President Trump said his meeting with Kim Jong-un could happen very soon. So there seems to be an underlying message there that there could have been behind the scenes talks going on between North Korea, U.S. and South Korea may have been in the loop for this. Do you believe there is simmering talks of another leader summit between North Korea and the U.S. even?
Yeah, actually, I agree. Generally speaking, it's a negotiation like the North Korea, U.S. nuclear denuclearization negotiation, something very hot issue, and they try not to get too much press coverage during the negotiation process. And also, you have to keep in mind that the location of negotiation, the venue is in New York, where the North Korea already have their people there already. I mean, working there. Yes. And they do have a official channel to communicate with State Department, right, very regular basis. So I think although it's not covered by news, they are talking for a long time. And one of the catch I'm getting from the press release is that they talk about the meeting. Trump, I think, occasionally mentioned about the meeting with Kim Jong-un is kind of well-prepared deal or something. It's issues more like where they're going to meet. And I think they heard some interview and they talk about, are you going to meet Kim Jong-un? And then, are you going to go Pyongyang, right? So I think it might be they're already talking about they decide to meet again someday. And the question is where. I think their timeline is pretty, time is ticking for him because of the U.S. presidential election next year, right, November, and then they're going to start in Iowa in February. So you need to get some kind of achievement in the foreign relations. So they're kind of anxious to do anything they can do at that time.
And of course, there was that Kim Jong-un's announcement of a deadline, of a timeline of the year's end to the U.S. They said that the U.S. must come with a new calculation if it wants to continue negotiations with North Korea, and that's the timeline would be the year's end. So do you expect a leader summit to happen by the end of this year?
Yeah, I think so, and I hope so, definitely. But it's very interesting, good point actually. When Donald Trump talked about new method, he mentioned it like, new method would be good. And right after, the North Korea response was they used different term, a new calculation. So it's very interesting because that normally if it's international negotiation or stuff, if you agree with the other side, you're using the same term actually. Like you try to not to get any ambiguity on the actual process, but they come up with new calculations. Very interesting. Means that it's implying that to me, they already kind of agree on the framework about how to do it, how much they go about plus alpha, how much do you need from the Yeonbyeon plus alpha? Maybe they're already getting close to the deal, and now they're talking about how to calculate for like a compensation or anything they can try to get in return from the U.S. government.
So, which brings me to the question that there have been talks in the Washington Circle that this time around the U.S. will come to the negotiations table with North Korea should that happen with lifting of certain kind of sanctions.
Yes, I mean in Hanoi, they talk about the issue, right? And the problem, I think the problem the U.S. government faced in Hanoi was that they were thinking that sanction relief is the all solution for the issue with North Korean denuclearization, but it wasn't true because North Korea was thinking about more than just sanction relief, and I think that even the Minister of Kang Kyung-hwa talked about several times about the not only the sanction relief, but also they need the security guarantee, right? So that's things they will talk today about how to get security guarantee to North Korea from the maybe Korean perspective, I guess.
Now, so in the last year or so, maybe not a full year, but in the last at least 10 months or so, South Korea's role or President Moon Jae-in's role as the mediator between North Korea and the U.S. and this peace process had been a little bit shadowed, or I believe had been under the cover, and some had even said that the role had even diminished. Now, President Moon Jae-in, it appears to me that is looking to re-step up that role, and he wants to now play up the role and react as a mediator. Do you believe that this is another opportunity for him to do that, and do you believe South Korean president could play their role this time around?
Yeah, actually, that in that respect, I think that the President Moon Jae-in's visit to UN UN General Assembly meeting and become a keynote speaker. Right, I think that's a good move because that you can ask for the international support for his peace process in Korean Peninsula. And one of the things he can do as a mediator, he can ask for the international support for his agenda, right? That's a good sign, and that's kind of making a mood for peace building process in Korean Peninsula.
Right, and this particular visit to New York this time around by President Moon was focused particularly for the UN General Assembly and the South Korea-US summit. Yeah. And so hopefully we will see something by the day's end. What kind of specific outcome do you believe will come out of these talks? Because the summit that was supposed to begin about 10 minutes or 8 minutes ago has been postponed because, of course, it's the UN General Assembly week, and in New York, we all know that it's a very busy week in terms of traffic and the heads of state schedule. So there has been a delay. So we're running about 10 minutes behind. So we don't know whether they will have their full 45-minute long bilateral summit between the two leaders. But what do you expect to come out by the end of the summit?
Yeah, the question, I think main issue is about a new method suggested by Donald Trump, and I think that President Moon prepared some solution, from his perspective. So I guess he make some suggestion. He will make a suggestion to President Trump about some several alternatives, what to do. And for example, he talk about inviting Kim Jong-un to Busan for the Korean ASEAN special summit in November. So I guess they want to talk about the issue, and I think personally, I don't think Kim Jong-un is interested in Busan. I think he's more interested in Washington or either, because it's about negotiation between U.S. and North Korea, right? So maybe it depends on how we see it, but from the party in each dispute, they're more interested on doing some place where they get more media coverage. Think about Donald Trump at Pyongyang. That's be highlight headline news in all over the world, right? Or the Kim Jong at the Washington D.C. That's going to be headline, right? The first time ever, right?
Right.
So I think once they decide to complete the negotiation, try to terminate. Once they decide to do something, they prepare have a bigger media coverage, which will be more like Pyongyang or Washington D.C. sounds more, better.
Right. So, do you believe that this could be done in a one-step process? So, in one leader summit, it could be done and over with, or do you think it will turn out to be a gradual process that eventually, for some people, would be reminiscent of the years past, of the six-party nuclear negotiations and whatnot, where it would return to the step-by-step negotiations of denuclearization?
Actually, that was the issue. Actually, happened some problem with the Hanoi, right? And North Korea won step-by-step process, whereas Bolton, right, former national security advisor, want to complete denuclearization one-shot approach, right, and called a Libya model, and which didn't work out, and that's why he left the White House. And the issue is that I think that I looked it up some of the research that even in practical perspective, it will take quite a time. Some experts say 10 years to actually finish the denuclearization process in North Korea. Because if you think about what we do here in even South Korea, we have some nuclear plant, and then if you want to have some problem to deal with some issue, if the nuclear plant will take actually longer than we thought actually. So given the fact that it will take quite some time, maybe what's the practical advantage to rushing too fast? Because that it will take anyway several years at least, and that give them some breathing space. Let's do it finish something substantive. We can do it. Maybe perhaps small deal each step. Right?
Now, so the summit that was supposed to take place roughly 15 minutes ago has been delayed due to the leaders' delayed schedules from their previous commitments. And the summit between President Moon and President Trump is expected to begin in about 7 minutes or so at 5:34 p.m. in New York and 6:34 a.m. here in Seoul. So we have a couple of minutes to discuss another area of interest for us in South Korea, as well as in, I suppose, Northeast Asia geopolitics, and for the U.S. as well, is the issue of GSOMIA. And of course, U.S. congressmen have also been stepping up and voicing out their statements that, in fact, President Trump, the U.S. need to step up and play the mediator role in souring relations between South Korea and Japan, because it's in the interest of the U.S. as well. Do you believe the issue of GSOMIA, or the intel sharing pact between South Korea and Japan, will come up between the two leaders today?
I don't think so, actually. That's the bilateral issue between Korea and Japan. And plus, they got more urgent issue to discuss, and they don't have much time to discuss, actually. So I think that what both leaders try to do here is they want to focus, they want to make sure that their alliance is still strong. They form alliance and show the world that we are still allies and good friends to each other and shaking hands. I think that's the good photo app, right? And then sending message to North Korea as well. Then we are still, alliance is still strong, firm, and we are together now. So you have to negotiate with us, not one by one. Basically, I think they're sending message. That's what they're trying to get it.
All right, and it looks like we are getting the live coverage. So let's tune in.
We're working on tremendous trade deals. As you know, we've completed a trade deal that's working out very well for both countries. That deal is completed now, and it's been in existence solidly in existence for 6 months, and it's been very good. And we intend to do some additional things on trade. Of course, we'll be talking about North Korea. We'll be talking about the purchase of equipment. South Korea is one of our largest purchasers of military equipment, and we're working together very well.
예, 먼저 감사드리고 오늘 한국에서 오신 문재인 대통령을 만나뵙게 되어서 굉장히 기쁘게 생각을 합니다. 우리 두 사람은 굉장히 오랫동안 우애를 유지할 수 있는 관계에 있고 우리 양국 간의 관계에 있어서도 상당히 많은 진전이 있었습니다. 양국 간의 교역 협상에 있어서도 저희가 굉장히 많은 부분에 진전을 보았고 지금 완성을 시킨 상태로 6개월 동안 진행이 되고 있는 상태입니다. 그 이외에도 북한에 대해서도 오늘 좀 이야기를 할까 하고요. 그 다음에 한국이 또 저희의 군사 장비를 굉장히 구매하고 계시는 큰 국이기 때문에 이 부분에 대한 이야기도 나누게 될 것 같습니다.
네, 3개월 만에 대통령이 같이 뵙게 돼서 정말 반갑습니다. 지난번 대통령님의 판문점 방문은 행동으로 발언을 주신 아주 세계적인 장면이었습니다. 대통령님의 상상력과 또 대단한 대통령이 생겼습니다.
Mr. President, it's a great pleasure to meet you again 3 months after our last meeting. Your visit to Panmunjom will go down as a historic moment that embodied peace through action, and I have to say that I always marvel at your imagination and bold decision making.
대통령님의 리더십에 의해서 남북 관계는 크게 발전했고 또 국민 대화가 이어지고 있습니다. 조만간 제3차 한미정상회담을 준비하기 위한 북미 간의 실무 협상이 열리리라고 기대를 합니다. 제3차 북미 정상회담이 열린다면 아마도 한반도의 역할의 새로운 질서가 만들어지는 아주 세계사적인 대전은 업계이 될 것이라고 믿습니다.
Thanks to your leadership, we have been able to achieve great progress in terms of inter-Korean relations, and this has also led to a dialogue between the United States and North Korea, and soon I will be expecting the working level negotiations between the United States and North Korea to prepare for your third summit with Chairman Kim to be resumed soon. And when you have your third summit with Chairman Kim, maybe I hope that this will go down as a truly historic moment in world history. This will be a great achievement that equals a great transformation in terms of complete denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula.
대통령과 함께하는 동안 한미동맹은 아주 위대한 동맹으로 발전하고 있습니다. 경제적인 면에 있어서도 한미 FTA 개정 협상이 성공적으로 마무리됐고 많은 한국 기업들이 미국에 투자를 늘려나가고 있습니다.
During the time I've been working together with you, the ROC-US Alliance has been evolving in a great way. Especially in the economic field, we have been able to revise our bilateral free trade agreement, and that has been a great success, while many Korean companies are increasing their investment in America.
이번 방문 기회에도 미국의 LNG 가스에 대한 한국의 수입을 추가하는 그런 결정이 이루어지고 또한 한국의 자동차업계와 미국의 자율여행 기업 간의 합작 투자가 이루어지게 되었는데 이 모두가 한미 동맹을 더욱더 든든하게 발전시키는 것이라고 믿습니다.
And during the course of my visit to New York, we'll be signing the deal to increase the import of LNG from America, while we'll also be signing a deal regarding a joint venture between a Korean motor company and an automated vehicle company in America. So I believe that all of this will come to reinforce our already strong alliance.
그 밖에도 한미 동맹을 더욱 발전시키는 다양한 방안에 대해서 오늘 훨씬 강한 그런 대화를 나누기를 기대합니다.
And furthermore, I do look forward to engaging in candid discussions with you today on how we could truly make great progress in our alliance in other aspects as well.
What's it going to take to have a third summit with Chairman Kim, sir? Well, we'll see. Right now, people would like to see that happen. I want to know what's going to be coming out of it. We can know a lot before the summit takes place. We had really 2 very successful summits. There's been, as you know, there's been no lessening of the sanctions. There's only been an increasing of the sanctions. But very importantly, we have our hostages back. and that was a very big deal. And we got our hostages back. We have the remains of our great heroes from the past back, a lot of them, and they're coming in, and they actually have a lot of them ready to start coming in again. So a lot of things have happened, plus there's been no nuclear testing at all for the last quite a long period of time, at least that we can detect. And the relationships have been very good. So we'll see what happens, but we'd like to see if we can do something, and if we can, that'll be great. And if we can't, that's fine, we'll see what happens. But there's been no nuclear testing for a long time, a long time.
Mr. President, for guns, do you plan on announcing a gun plan in the coming days? And if so, is it going to include background checks?
Well, we're working very much with the Republicans, and we're working also with the Democrats, but a lot of the Democrats are wasting their time on nonsense, on pure nonsense. So they don't have much time to work on guns, unfortunately. If they did, it would be probably pretty easy to do. But we always have to protect our Second Amendment. It's very important. I saw where this character from Texas, I can't imagine he'll get one vote in Texas. He wants to start confiscating guns. That's not a good thing. That's no good. It makes it actually much harder to make a deal when this Beto O'Rourke comes out and starts talking about confiscating guns. When you do that, it makes it much tougher. But the Democrats are really just wasting so much time on nonsense, on junk. And if they focused on this, they could get it done. But we have to protect our Second Amendment. We have to protect people that want and need guns, and we have to keep guns out of the hands of crazy people and sick people. Very simple. Not very complicated.
Are you considering sanctions, considering actions first before denuclearization as part of your new method for the denuclearization talks?
Sanctions where?
Sanctions first before denuclearization as part of your new method in the denuclearization talks.
You're going to have to speak up. Say it again. Sanctions. Go ahead. What was it?
Sanctions, considering actions first before denuclearization.
Where?
For North Korea in the denuclearization talks.
I'm not considering actions. We're getting along very well with North Korea. I have a good relationship with Kim Jong-un, and we're not considering actions at all. There's no reason for actions. I will say this, if I weren't president, you'd be at war with North Korea, in my opinion. If the same group was in that preceded me, you'd be in a war with North Korea. So we're not looking at any actions. We have a good relationship with Kim Jong-un. We'll see what happens. Maybe we'll be able to make a deal, maybe not.
Mr. President, I meant sanctions first. I beg your pardon.
Go ahead.
Breaking news just now.
More breaking news?
More breaking
There's
news.
always breaking news. It's usually breaking fake news. Go ahead.
Two rockets just landed in the green zone in Baghdad. Do you see this as an escalation in the Middle East? And
I don't know anything about it. You just told me it's breaking news. So I'll have to see it. Right now I'm here. I haven't heard it.
But this is not the first time.
When did this happen?
Just now, but it's not the first time. Many
No,
rockets
that's not
landed
the
before.
first time. No. We'll look into it. We'll look into it.
But are you worried about U.S. embassy in Baghdad, the security there?
We'll look into it. I know nothing about it. You just told me it's breaking, so therefore I assume it's relatively new, like within the last 4 days.
Mr. President, you plan on discussing the North Korean short-range missile tests with the
Yeah,
counterpart
we're gonna
and the
discuss it.
President yourself?
I will be
comment on the
discussing.
North Korean
Yeah, I
tests?
will be discussing. We didn't have an agreement on short-range missiles, and a lot of people in a lot of countries test short-range missiles. There's nothing spectacular about that. But we will be discussing that also.
Can we hear from President Yoon if he is troubled by the short-range missiles and if he'd like to see you maybe try to stop it from happening? Talk to the
Well, we'll take a look at it. We're going to talk about it, but I didn't really discuss that with Kim Jong-un. That was never part of our discussion. We did discuss nuclear testing and other things, and frankly, he's lived up to his word on those things that we discussed. We actually signed an agreement in Singapore, and we actually had 2 very good meetings. You would have been at war right now with North Korea if I weren't president. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Press, let's go. Press, let's go. Press, we're leaving here.
Thank you, President.
Press, we're going. Let's go. Keep moving. Come on, press. We're going.
Thank you, guys.
Come on, press. Let's go. Move. Come on, please. Let's go.
Thanks, guys.
All right, you just saw a live footage coming in from New York of President Moon Jae-in and President Donald Trump's opening remarks before heading into their bilateral summit, the ninth of their kind in New York, and a question and answer session by reporters between the two presidents and reporters there. We will continue our coverage, and I'm going to re-invite back our expert, Professor An from Yonsei University. Now, Professor An, so they discuss a couple of things. So this is prior to heading into their face-to-face. A 45-minute long one. It had been delayed for about 25 minutes or so, 20 minutes or so, because of the previous commitments in this busy week of UN General Assembly. First of all, President Trump discussed about or talked about South Korea being the biggest purchaser, one of the leading purchasers of U.S. military equipment, and how the two countries have a mutually beneficial trade agreement. Of course, President Trump loves talking about economic relationships and trade advantages that the U.S. has or does not have over his counterparts. So that was what he discussed. And in return, President Moon Jae-in then talked about how the DMZ or Panmunjom meeting between President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un 2 months ago would go down the history, and he expects a third leader summit between Trump and Kim Jong-un to happen quite soon. And it's interesting how President Moon said that a third Trump-Kim summit will create a new order for North Korean denuclearization process. So the nuance there for me was that Trump-Kim summit would happen before a denuclearization process, before a significant amount of denuclearization happens. So there will be a summit, I suppose, in parallel with the denuclearization process at least. So it's not that denuclearization has to happen before the leaders meet. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yep. So that was the nuance I got. Also, President Moon discussed, this is what we had anticipated, but he had a lot of Korean firms investing in the U.S. He did talk about many Korean firms that continue, upping their investment in the U.S. He did discuss signing a deal to increase imports of energy from the U.S. to South Korea, and also discuss automobiles, which was Hyundai Group setting up a $4 billion joint venture with an American firm. So a lot of investment there. And then President Trump took some questions. He discussed that North Korea hasn't had a nuclear testing since he last met with Kim Jong-un, or his meeting with Kim Jong-un. He said that he will be discussing short-range missiles by North Korea with President Moon, although he downplayed the severity of short-range missiles. Am I correct on that, to know that?
Sorry, what? The last one?
President Trump did say, taking reporters' questions, did say that he will be discussing North Korea's launching of short-range missiles in recent times with President Moon during this meeting. However, he downplayed the severity or the gravity of a short-range missile, saying that many other countries just tested as well. But he also made note that sanctions are in place as of now. They have never lowered sanctions yet. They have most powerful sanctions ever is still in place. Now, so what was your take of this entire opening remarks by the two leaders before heading into their summit?
Yes, it's very interesting speech by both leaders. Yeah, actually, as I expected, both sides had a different view on the situation, right? From the President Trump side, and because the election is coming soon, right? So he want to show off his foreign relation achievements.
Right.
So he talked about Korea FTA, and also he emphasized that it's beneficial to both countries.
Right.
It's very interesting because and that's why they try to get he show up his foreign affairs achievement. Also, I think he talked about how much benefit they get it from the Korea-U.S. FTA amendment. Also, but on the other hand, the President Moon's side, he talked about the history movement at the DMZ visit. Also, as we discussed before the interview, and about he had a strong alliance between two countries. I think that's the he wanna, and then he finished up by expressing hope to hold candid talk between two parties, right? And it's interesting about the Donald Trump was that they talk about the reporters ask a question about the sanction issue. I think he sounds very sensitive on the issue because basically the reporter was asking about are you sticking to Libya model basically about about the Bolton approach, right? He was kind of making some faces, what do you mean? And he actually asked where, right?
Yeah.
So I think he knew what's talking about, but he tried to ignoring, downplaying, right? So, and he emphasized, his point is that he had a good relationship with Kim Jong. I think that's the message he want to send to North Korea. And then the President Moon want to send it that we have a strong alliance between the two countries. I think that's a key point. The both leaders tried to send it.
Right. So the two leaders had very powerful, important messages that they each wanted to convey. And for Mr. Trump, it was that he has a good relationship with North Korea.
Yeah.
He wants to move forward with that. For President Moon, it was that U.S. and South Korea have a rock-hard alliance. Am I correct on that?
Yeah.
Well, so we'll leave it there. We will like to discuss with you further on a much in-depth analysis of the situation. But for now, thank you very much for your very early morning appearance on our show. We appreciate your insights as always. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And that wraps up our live coverage of the South Korea-U.S. summit on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York. We will be back with our regular newscast at 7 a.m. in about 15 minutes time. Until then, this is a wrap. Bye-bye.